Well, it kind of reminds me of one of Karl Marx's favorite quotes from Goethe's Mephistopheles in the Faust opera, where Mephistopheles, which is basically, the devil, states, "Everything that exists deserves to perish." Marx wrote a poem when he was younger in 1837. And in this poem, he wrote, "Then will I wander godlike and victorious through the ruins of the world." Basically, it's very similar to the video from the World Economic Forum of an empty world with empty streets, and it's quiet. So you can hear things that you could not hear because humans are noisy. We make a lot of noise, and we like to produce things and create things, and it maybe creates, trash, and that trash needs to be recycled. It's much simpler if there are no people. Okay, something like that. Now, if you want a world without people, what comes next? Well, for some people, it's transhumanism or humans 2.0. So Klaus Schwab, who's the founder and CEO of the World Economic Forum, said, human augmentation, meaning referring to artificial intelligence, engineering, nanotechnology, has the potential to change the meaning of what it means to be human. Okay, so we can tinker with the genes of people. We can have human beings who are hooked into the metaverse, essentially this artificial world of artificial intelligence. And nanotechnology means tiny devices that are injected into our bloodstream. So let me show you what I mean. I want to play a video by Dr. Yuval Noah Harari. He is a transhumanist, and he's a top advisor to Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. He speaks at their events all the time.
In the past, many tyrants and governments wanted to do it, but nobody understood biology well enough. And nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it. But soon, at least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people. We humans should get used to the idea that we are no longer mysterious souls. We are now hackable animals. Data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it. And if indeed we succeed in hacking and engineering life, this will be not just the greatest revolution in the history of humanity. This will be the greatest revolution in biology since the very beginning of life 4 billion years ago. For 4 billion years, nothing fundamental changed in the basic rules of the game of life. All of life, for 4 billion years, dinosaurs, amoebas, tomatoes, humans, all of life was subject to the laws of natural selection and to the laws of organic biochemistry. But this is now about to change. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds, the IBM Cloud, the Microsoft Cloud. These are the new driving forces of evolution. And at the same time, science may enable life, after being confined for 4 billion years to the limited realm of organic compounds, science may enable life to break out into the inorganic realm. So after 4 billion years of organic life shaped by natural selection, we are entering the era of inorganic life shaped by intelligent design.
Okay, there you have it. So you have intelligent design not by God the Creator, but allegedly, according to Dr. Harari, by the Microsoft Corporation or IBM, in, the cloud, right? The internet cloud. Right? He said humans are no longer mysterious souls; they are hackable animals. And I have to say, this really shows, I would say, both the arrogance and the ignorance of people like Dr. Harari. And I want to play a really interesting response by a neurosurgeon named Dr. Michael Egnor, and he discusses, look, Dr. Harari and other materialists basically, and Darwinists, right? They basically believe that thoughts are just the product of chemical reactions in the brain, right? That's their viewpoint. And that's their assumption. And their assumption, therefore, is, well, if we do some gene editing and if we hook in the mind to an interface with the cloud, we're essentially changing humans into something different. But let me just play the video for you.
Cause all manner of experience for the patient. You could have the patient raise their arm, you could have the patient move their leg, you could have them move their face, or even say a word, or see a flash of light, depending on where he stimulated the brain. I've had that experience myself, not only as a surgeon, but as a volunteer in a project that used a magnetic stimulator that just held outside of my skull, and I had my own arm move that same way by stimulating my cortex. And what Penfield found, much to his consternation, was that he could not simulate agency on the part of the patient. That is, when he would stimulate the brain, he would ask the patient, who just did that? Because the patient would move their arm. They couldn't see what he was doing, so they didn't know they were stimulated. They would always say, you stimulated me. You made my arm move. He would have them move their arm on their own, and then he would make it move. They could always tell the difference. He searched for agency using his electrodes, and over 30 years he couldn't find it. So he said the agency is not material. The actual movement is mediated by a circuit, but the agency is something different. The other thing he noted, which is a fascinating observation that remarkably has gone completely unquestioned in medical science, is he asked, why are there no intellectual seizures? We know about seizures. People can fall down, they shake all over, or you can have milder seizures where you just move a limb, or your face twitches, or where you have an abnormal smell or have visual phenomena. But you never start doing calculus when you have a seizure. And you never contemplate justice, and you never contemplate political science. And the question is, well, if large portions of the brain are devoted to higher intellectual functioning, why don't seizures occasionally make you take second derivatives instead of just jerk your arm? And they never, ever do. In 30 years of practice, I've never seen a seizure have any intellectual evocation. And Penfield asked, why are there no intellectual seizures? So his answer as to why he could not find agency by stimulating the brain and why he never observed an intellectual seizure was that the intellect and the will in human beings is not in the brain. It's not material. The brain mediates it, but doesn't give rise to it.
Okay, to me, there's a really fascinating statement that he's making, because look, scientists know which part of the brain they can stimulate to move your limbs, to do physical things. But for more than 3 decades, they've been trying to find out what part of the brain creates new thoughts, new ideas, and they cannot find it. He's saying the brain does not create thoughts and intentions, it's a receiver. The brain is a receiver of the mind. The mind is beyond the brain. The mind interfaces with the brain, but the mind is not the creation of chemical processes in the brain. Is a strong refutation, I would say, of the materialist viewpoint of human life, which is basically that we're just a product of matter and chemical processes, and we can just be hacked. So I just want to talk about the fourth industrial revolution. It refers to rapid changes in technology industries and societal patterns in the 21st century. Artificial intelligence, gene editing, advanced robotics. They envision these technologies as really transforming the human race. It would allow governments to do surveillance and to control people in a way that Hitler and Stalin could only dream of, okay? That is their vision for how this technology could be used to determine who's allowed to travel, who has a vaccine passport. And he even says it could even be used for pre-crime purposes. So I think you remember the Minority Report movie where they did pre-crime. They predicted which people were likely to commit crimes, and they imprisoned them before they committed any crime, okay? Without a trial. The fourth industrial revolution and the new caste system. We have the Davos man monopolist overlords who hold all the assets, control all financial transactions, and increasingly all governments. And then we have the virtuals. The virtuals are people who work at a layer of abstraction from the physical world. They work in finance, academia, education, media, technology. They deal with symbols. And then we have the physicals who work in sectors like farming, construction, manufacturing, haulage, and mining. These are people who are dealing with the real substantial world and creating things, growing things, right? Taking things out of the ground, building things, right? Those are the physicals. Now, the virtuals have a motivation to support the monopolist overlords who, after all, they are the source of their funding. I mean, you may have a certain talent for law or finance, for academia, education, technology, but you can't eat symbols. I mean, you need income. The physicals actually can grow food, right? So theoretically, I mean, if things got really bad, they could survive, right? But people who are only engaged in virtual activity, they are really dependent upon funding from somebody, right? So, and then this from an article by Dr. Robert Malone. He says, from the perspective of the overlords, virtuals are even more expendable than the physicals are. I mean, you could say that you could replace some of the physicals with robots, right? There are some things that humans do which you can have robots do some of those things, right? But he says, someone needs to run the farms, milk the cows, or at least maintain the robotic milking machines, collect the trash, and treat the ill. The virtuals are the ones at greatest risk of replacement by computational algorithms. We're actually entering into a Gnostic virtual world divorced from reality. The thinking classes are fatally removed from the physical side of life. Their only relation to productive labor, in many cases, not all cases, is that of consumers. Many have no experience of making anything substantial or enduring, right? You're dealing with symbols. One example is rights for transsexuals make sense as a proxy for the virtuals, their core moral belief and claim that ideas matter more than the material world. A truly balanced person would say that both are important, right? That, look, no one's negative, I think, about ideas, but ideas need to be confirmed by experiments in the real world. You need that feedback loop from the material world to confirm whether your ideas are good or not. Otherwise, you might get a mass death experiment like communism. You have this great brilliant idea, so-called brilliant idea by Karl Marx about how the world's going to be a utopia if we just kill all the capitalists and then the workers create the workers' paradise. And that several hundred million people were murdered because of his stupid idea, which had no basis in reality. It was just an idea, expressed by a very gifted rhetorician. There's some people who are very charismatic. They're very persuasive. They can shout louder, okay? He would actually shout down other socialists, people who are actually from the working class. And he would label them and smear them and say that they were not true socialists. He was a scientific socialist. And he destroyed their reputation because he had a will to power. There's a revival of Gnosticism. They believe that the material world is evil. They advocated not eating meat, fasting, becoming more spiritual. And they believed that people who had a special knowledge were the elite, the truly saved. And they believed that people who just dealt with the material world are kind of very low-class people who are not saved. So we're seeing a revival of that type of Christian heresy in the world today. You can ignore the reality that you have a male or female body. That doesn't matter. If you're a guy and you identify as a woman, then all of us are obligated to say you're a woman. Allowing the human mind to claim authority over reality. And basically, you're making yourself your own God. I am the God that essentially creates reality. And I can ignore, first of all, my own body, and I can ignore what other people, there are no social feedback that I have to pay attention to. In another context, we would never put up with this. There are girls who have anorexia who literally weigh less than 80 pounds who think that they are overweight. And they're literally starving themselves to death. No sane parent would say, oh yeah, you're overweight. I'm going to help you starve yourself to death. But that's essentially, we're allowing this in the context of the transgender issue.